Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Victor and I help people navigate through their awakening process. And this video is going to give you guys 5 different practical ways for dealing with the intense relationship changes that tend to happen quite quickly after you spring into your awakening. Once you come to a place in your life where you realize there is such a thing as a spiritual awakening and you are in fact going through it and you start to see everything differently, one of the hardest things to deal with is the relationship changes. Because what does an awakening imply? Well, it's sort of a long process, but initially waking up, you could say, is about realizing there's more to you, more to life, more to reality, more to existence than you ever knew before. And your consciousness does take sort of a jump. And you start to see everything differently. And after that, even though for some people it's sort of initially a very awesome experience, you kind of settle back down and there's a whole lot of rearranging of all aspects of yourself and your life. All your unconsciousness sort of comes up to be integrated. You have to reorient all these different aspects of your life because you suddenly see them completely differently. And some things you see and say, wow, I'm glad that's there. And other things like, wow, this doesn't belong. And for many things, it's not a big deal. For example, you wake up, you realize, wow, there's a lot of fear-based propaganda on the television. I'm going to sell my TV on Craigslist and start reading more spiritual books. That's an easy one. That's a no-brainer. But when it comes to, wow, these people who I've known my entire life, I don't know where I stand with them. I don't know whether I should just get the hell out of, just run away and never talk to them again, or try to have a conversation with them, or maybe we'll just see how it plays out. But there's a lot of, it's more of a complex situation because there's other people's feelings involved. And any considerate person is going to weigh that into their decision as to how to deal with this. So I've gone through this a lot, and I'm going to give you guys 5 different practical ways that can help give you some sort of a framework for how to address your relationship changes that I know you're going to be going through. Number 1, don't make any rash decisions. Because as you well know, your perspective on matters can change at the drop of a dime. And you might wake up or have an intense experience with somebody, and immediately your mind starts drawing conclusions. Like, there's been times where, I'll give you an example, a perfect example of a regret I have in this situation because I didn't give myself time. When I was living in Florida, as many of you guys know, it was like my hermit phase, right? And I was doing a lot of inner work. One of the things I was doing is, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, flotation therapy. It's like you go into a sensory deprivation tank, you're floating in water, a lot of Epsom salt, so you basically float there in water that's your own body temperature in a completely dark room, no sound, and it's just like you become deprived of your senses, and it has a very healing effect. There was this guy that used to run out of his house, named Emmanuel. Really cool guy, real cool. He's like a spiritual teacher guy. But I was growing so quickly, and there was a time I went there to meet with him and do this float. And I just triggered the crap out of him. I was just like in my zone for some reason. I was like really like in my zone. That at that time it was sort of rare. It would only come and go at random times. But I could tell that triggered him big time. He was a teacher. So he started acting real weird with me, almost kind of condescending, kind of mocking some of the experiences I had shared with him in the past. And it just freaked me out. I'm like, this guy doesn't like me. So the whole time in the flotation thing, I didn't even close my eyes. I'm just waiting to get the hell out of here. I did not like how that was because I experienced his ego in just a very intense sort of way, and it made me immediately judge him as like a bad person, not right for me, gotta get away, etc. And then I left. I shook his hand. I never spoke to him again. And having gone, as I continued on, I realized that sometimes you just get glimpses of people's egos from time to time, and it doesn't mean they're a bad person. You just saw a little snippet of who they actually are. And for me to make a judgment and to sever off that was a pretty good relationship at the drop of a dime was a huge mistake. I feel bad about it, and I should probably call him up, honestly, because we were pretty cool. But I've done that. I hate to admit, but I've done that in the past because I didn't know what to make of it. All I knew was, I don't like this, and then I made a decision because I didn't like that feeling, but it was way premature. Number 2, it's helpful and not easy sometimes, but to acknowledge your own role in the situation. Sometimes someone treats you a certain way because of something you're doing to sort of catalyze that behavior in them. I'll give you an example. I had this really good friend I mentioned in a recent video. His name was Derek, best friend of mine. And again, I was watching him sort of descend into drugs and abuse, and I was sort of on my ascent, doing better for myself. And I always saw the potential in him. I always saw him for who I thought he could be, not who he actually was, or presently was anyway. And I would always try to give him opportunities. I had this one, long time ago, I had this girl in my basement, many, many years ago. I've talked about this many times. This is like an earlier experience, first time I grew. And I invited him in to help me because he had some equipment. And I just thought it'd be good. We'd make some money, he'd get some money, and he could save some, maybe get out of his house. His parents are sort of toxic. And I just saw all these, I was trying to meddle in with what I thought he should be doing with his life. So I gave him this opportunity. It was so nice of me, right? And he just kept screwing me over in a sense. He kept not showing up to do his fair share. And we just had a lot of partner type of problems. And now I can see it many years later. I'm looking back at it, and at the time it bugged me. I thought, wow, he's not a good friend. He keeps leaving me hanging. But really, I sort of set him up for that because I was trying to force something into his life that wasn't really right. I was trying to help him for me, and he was just reacting to me being a little bit controlling, honestly. Even though I could, at the time, and I did this, made a case wow, I'm being so nice. I gave him this opportunity, and this is how he repays it to me. But really, my motives, deep, deep down, were not quite so pure. So sometimes you might have that where someone's mistreating you, but it could very well be the result of something you're doing. So always be willing and at least open to look at yourself and your own role in the situation. Number 3 is to always, as best you can, because there are times where it's hard, but value yourself. Where so many people I talk to will bend over backwards for others, and they won't have a sense of entitlement to anything in return. And because a lot of people are unconscious, there's a lot of friends, family members that might take advantage of that, and you find yourself in this incredibly one-sided relationship where you're just always doing and giving of yourself, and they're always taking and taking and taking. And you'll start to see this more obviously, wow. You just kind of wake up into it, and you'll see it that it's not just you being nice. It's just these unbalanced relationships aren't going to sit well with you for very much longer, and you just have to value yourself. I'll just put it that way. And sometimes it does involve nicely cutting someone off if you don't perceive them to be in a state of consciousness where you can have a reasonable conversation with them where it'll penetrate and they'll actually understand your perspective. Some people aren't going to. And you have the right to be happy in all of your relationships. It's not helpful to them either anyway to always be fixing them and letting them basically feed off your energy. That's not doing them any favor. That's just sort of keeping them from dealing with their own issues in a more constructive way. So just the whole point of it is to value yourself. You have the right to have good relationships. Don't just bend over backwards for people. You're going to start to sense that you do that, and out of guilt, a lot of people will not get out of the relationship soon enough and find themselves just resenting the other person a lot, and then it ends in a messy way when it doesn't have to. 4, and as you can see, some of these are all sort of just little isolated bits of wisdom. They don't necessarily relate to the other ones, or it's not going in any sort of chronological order. This next one, number 4, is cut out the crabs as quickly as you can. What the hell is a crab, Vic? You're wondering. I'm going to tell you a little story about the crab analogy. You'll understand this, I promise you. So, imagine me, I'm walking down the beach and I see this crab fisherman. He's throwing his net in the water and he's gathering his crabs. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I walk up and I'm talking to him. I'm like, oh man, okay, you got a nice little feast later on. Big old bucket of crabs. And it's like, yeah, we're talking. I noticed down there, I glanced down, and one of the crabs I can see is about to like climb out of the bucket and escape, and it's near the water. He can get right into the water. And I say, hey, dude, man, you better get that crab. He said, no, watch. So you watch, and I said, every time a crab is about to get out of the bucket, all the little crab friends drag his ass back down. They don't want to see that crab escape into freedom. And we all, or many of us, have people in our life that are crabs, people that want to pull you down because your growth, your ascent, your forward progress in life makes them feel bad about themselves. So rather than dealing with themselves, they're going to try to, hey, why don't you, whatever. They're going to try to, in some sort of manipulative, subtly manipulative way, hold you down. And they don't know this on a conscious level. I would recommend not judging them and seeing them as a horrible person. But even more of a case in point, the fact that they're unconsciously doing it means they're likely not going to stop doing it. And if you let them, they will suck you down. They will stall and stifle your own growth because, and there's been studies that prove that who you are as a person really has a lot to do with who you surround yourself with. So be careful and only surround yourself with winners, people who are on the up and up like you. Number 5 is to just go with the flow, because there is no rhyme or reason. We're dealing with human relationship, very complex, dynamic, always in flux like water situation. There is no system. These are just things to think about, man. They're not even concrete piece of advice I'm giving you. Just things to keep in the back of your mind that I felt guilty pondering for a long time, and it caused a lot of unnecessary relationship conflict. What was I going to say here? Yes, change happens quickly. What I found an interesting phenomenon is me and my wife sort of moved around a lot, as we talk about, and we'd have a place, we'd have a move, and we'd move somewhere. And we'd meet some people, and we'd like jive, and we'd kick it up, we'd hit it off real nicely, and we'd quickly build up these relationships. Not even serious ones. For example, maybe like the daycare people, we'd take my daughter, the people me and my wife trained with when we do like our Muay Thai and I would do my jiu-jitsu, people at the gym, grocery store. You kind of quickly build up these people that you see often, and in the beginning, what we had noticed, we'd be like, awesome, it'd be perfect and appropriate and right. But because we were growing so fast, going through all these changes, we were never static. We'd meet someone and have this total like way about us, and 6 months later, like different people. And as we continue to grow, we would find that it was very often that we trigger people, and these people that we once jived with beautifully, even months ago, now they don't like us. We're starting to trigger them. They're starting to become crabs. It's just no longer a match. So we are always very, very quick to move on when necessary, and to honor our own growth, because at least it's my opinion that being true to yourself, no matter what that is the best way to be helpful on the planet as a whole. It's tempting to sort of hold ourselves back because we have a personal attachment to this or that person. But if we're stifling our own destiny, our own progress, that is not actually conducive technically to the whole. What the world needs is people to all come into their own and become the best version of themselves, not to always have to dim their light to not bother people. So hopefully those 5 things were helpful to you guys. Again, this is something that there is no rhyme, or there's no playbook for this sort of thing. But again, hopefully these things helped you a little bit. Just a little bit of wisdom I gained along my journey that now I always reflect on all these different facets and things I mention when I'm trying to make a decision about my relationships. So anyway, have an amazing day, guys. Thank you for listening. I will talk to you tomorrow. Namaste.